So here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to read chapter 14 of Walking on Cinders. Apologies, I'm a little bit late this evening because I had to work into the evening tonight. So I wasn't here at 6 p.m. as I should have been, but I'm here now, and this is going to be chapter 14 of my novel, Walking on Cinders. We're reading every chapter through this book at the moment as we're in isolation. I thought it'd be a nice thing to do to bring people together, and of course also this year is the 10th anniversary of my novel as well, so I wanted to do something to celebrate that. So chapter 14. Behind the gate and hidden from view by the overgrown hedge, 4 young people sat cut and bruised on the slope of a hill. Together they had managed to escape the tangled brambles and the stealth-like sting of the nettles, but they had fled in such earnest that they could never have made it out unscathed. Each had uttered a sigh of relief when they finally heard the rickety old tractor turn and head back down towards the village. Ewan's mind was swimming. "So, just run it past me again," he asked, moving his hands up and down his bruised legs. "Why are we actually doing any of this? What is it that your father has done?" Belle Levette winced and glanced at her sister. Surely it was time to reveal the truth. This could be their escape. She pulled a handful of grass from the hillside and began twirling it around in her fingers. Not looking up, she began to speak in a hushed and timid voice. "Well, Papa, he has the old-fashioned values." Her voice was so different to how it had been only an hour earlier. "He thinks that we want the same things that he wants, and we will settle down and stay here on the farm." Belle stopped and looked for a moment. It looked as if tears were forming in her blue eyes. Jennifer sympathised with her story, yet she wondered how much the old farmer really knew of the world. "It's like that wherever you go," the Force's sweetheart replied, placing her arm around the French girl and gently brushing the hair from her eyes. "They come from a different generation. Parents, I mean. And it's hard for them to understand the things that we want. At some point you simply have to just fly the nest." "But Papa," Rennie butted in, staring straight ahead at Jennifer as if she were the wisest woman in the world. "He thinks he can plan our lives for us when he does not know what is happening in your world. I've seen it. Sometimes me and Belle, we stay up late at night and we watch the news on the television, and we know what is happening in the world." Ewan felt it inside. So far the conversation had given him no reason to speak up. It wasn't his place to question. But war affects everyone, and sometimes you have to face up to the consequences and the facts of life. "This war," he said, so suddenly and plainly that it sounded almost natural. "World War III has been going on for 4 years, and there's no end in sight. What are we fighting for? Nothing. Merely the solution to a never-ending problem. Man has got a desire for conflict." Renee and Belle looked at the floor. They understood that it was happening, but they couldn't imagine how it might feel to be a part of it. Papa," Rennie sighed, tears falling. "He wants us to get married." "But that's not so bad," Jennifer smiled, seeing the happiness that might enter the twins' lives. "No," Rennie wept, tears falling faster now. He has picked out an husband for us both." There was silence for a moment as each of them considered what had just been said. "But what? Why has he done that?" Jennifer asked, struggling to comprehend the situation. "Surely you have your own minds, and you are more than old enough to make the decision for yourselves." Ewan chipped in, glad of the distraction from talking about the war. "Oh, we are always telling him," Rennie murmured, her accent slipping into a deeper, thicker French. "But he never listens. He has always been the same. He is overprotective." "It is because Mama died when we were still so young," Belle continued emotionlessly. He thinks that he is offering protection and guidance." "Well, you probably do need protection," Ewan muttered, shrugging, "but for a completely different reason." Rennie smiled for a moment, looking far into the distance. She moved her body in closer to the soldier, finally resting her head against his thigh. "We," she agreed, her expression changing so that she looked almost puppy-like. "We need protection from this war, but we need protection that comes from outside of the village." At that moment, Belle Levette suddenly stopped, frozen. She let the clump of grass that she'd been playing with fall to the ground. Then she turned to look at the others, sitting close to her on the hillside. Jennifer's arm was still draped loosely over her shoulder, and her cheeks blushed with the excitement of her thoughts. "Can we go with you?" she grinned, and looked from Ewan to Jennifer and back again. "It is the solution to our problems." "No, absolutely not," Ewan replied instantly, as it was only then that he noticed the tight hold that Renee had on his body. "You don't know where we're going." "Well," Renee replied, thinking hard but growing more confident with every passing moment, "you are a soldier, and she is Mademoiselle Marmalade, the force's sweetheart. You are lost in this village in the middle of France, so I think you might be heading to the nearest United barracks to be safe, no?" You know where the barracks are?" Ewan replied in surprise, now understanding that the twins might just lead them to victory. We do," Belle replied eagerly, "and we will fight and defend ourselves. We want to learn the courage of men as lovely as you." Jennifer shot her a horrified glance, and Belle blushed. "We would do anything." Both girls smiled, and Jennifer realised that she really would have her hands full if they decided to let these girls come along. "Come on, Ewan. I'm sure there will not be any trouble," she concluded, but by no means she was sure. "And if they can lead us to the barracks and to safety, then that's got to be a good thing." Ewan sighed and leaned forwards. "Okay," he muttered. "I guess you can come along." Before he had even finished speaking, both girls jumped forwards and began planting kisses all over his face. When they came up for air, he added, But first you need to steal into your own house and take clothes and provisions. And then, before we go much further, I want some more information on your father and who he wants you to marry." "It's a deal," Rennie giggled, leaning in to kiss him again. Before her, Jennifer looked aghast. Back on the farm, all was quiet, but the doors were locked, the girl's father thinking that locking them out would teach them a lesson. Renee tried the front door whilst her twin, padding as lightly as possible, tried the back. But Jennifer had spotted an open window, wide enough for one of them to squeeze through, and reachable if they climbed onto Ewan's shoulders. They wasted no time, Belle opting to shimmy through the tight space before the rest of them ran for shelter behind the front wall until she returned. Belle Levette landed on a battered old sofa, and she knew she would do. She raced towards the stairs. Up she jumped several steps at a time, deciding first to head for her sister's room, where she could grab backpacks and a pile of her sister's clothes. She left drawers open and clothes scattered, but that didn't matter. They were never coming back. Next she passed her papa's room, where she had the ingenuity to grab several faded shirts and a pair of trousers, which she was sure that Ewan desperately needed. She was about to follow along to her own room when she froze mid-stride. She swore she could hear something, a noise downstairs, but by now it would be too late. Whoever was there had made it into the house. Taking a deep breath, Belle Levette pulled her body back against the wall and edged along towards her own room. There was no going back now, and all she needed were a few more things. Outside, Renee, Ewan and Jennifer watched in silence as the old battered red tractor drew up into the yard. It was fate perhaps that the twins' father had returned. Now they were stuck, and Belle was trapped inside. "She could be in real danger," Ewan whispered, reaching out towards the wall and moving back behind the oak tree that overhung the road. "But if we stay silent and hidden, he's no reason to suspect that we are here." Renee Levette squeezed her eyes shut. "Where will she be?" Jennifer whispered urgently in her ear. "Upstairs," the twin mouthed, and Ewan knew what they had to do. The room was a mess, drawers flung open, cupboards empty, and a bed covered with clothes. Belle had stuffed what she wanted into the backpack already, but now she was looking for something far more important. Rummaging through an old wooden box, she found it, right at the bottom. Placing it quickly around her neck and then zipping up both bags, she pulled one over each shoulder and made a beeline for the stairs. She skidded around the corner and was about to jump down when she realised that her father had beaten her to it. A strong and imposing figure, he stood at the bottom of the stairs with a rolling pin in his left hand, beating it hard against the palm of his right. "You've been a very bad girl, Belle," he said. "You and your sister. Are you trying to escape from me like your mother did all those years ago?" Belle screamed suddenly, and her papa lashed forwards, then started to cry. "But Mum died," she protested in French. "You are wrong, Papa. You don't know what you're saying." Her father pulled himself several more steps upwards, his face covered in sweat, and he smiled a grim smile. I wanted your mother out of my life. She was gone, merely a memory, and so I told you she had died. It made things final." And with that, he raised the rolling pin high and made a second strike forwards at his teenage daughter, sending her fleeing in panic. Belle screamed again and ran to her sister's room, looking down and shutting the door behind her. The others were outside. She knew she could hear them. Her father banged repeatedly against the door, his voice louder than ever. "Come out, Belle. You are like your mother, and I know you would come back. I made a promise to Jonathan and Andrew, and I don't intend to break it. You're staying here in the village." He banged once more, a great thud this time, and then there was silence. He was waiting. There was only one thing that Belle could do. From the window she could see the others standing below. Figuring that they must have heard her screams, she rapped against the glass. They looked up in surprise, just in time to see the single pane shatter, sending shards of glass down towards the ground. The noise roused her father when he hammered against the door again, before Belle heard the sound of his footsteps and his heavy breathing moving down the stairs. She didn't have long. Soon he would be outside, where he could set himself on Ewan and the others. Moving the hooks of the ladder against the window, Belle checked that they were secure before shouting down to Ewan, and when he dragged the others out of the way to avoid the falling glass, she knew she was ready. She dropped the 2 rucksacks first, Ewan and Jennifer catching them with ease, and then, after one last look around the room, she felt around her neck to kiss her mother's necklace, and then turned to ease her legs out over the edge. As soon as the wooden rungs slipped under her feet, she knew it had been a bad idea. The others looked on in horror as the wooden ladder crashed to the ground beside them, and they saw Belle Lebet swinging from the window ledge, holding on for dear life. This time it was Renee who screamed, just as Ewan ran to stand directly beneath her terrified twin. Jennifer closed her eyes and placed a hand over Renee's, whilst Ewan looked up, realising that Belle would not be able to hold on for long. "Jump," he shouted, "and I'll catch you." Behind him, Renee screamed again, but Belle knew there was little else she could do. Ewan was a soldier, he was strong, and it was not that far to the ground. Squeezing her eyes shut, Belle Lebet let go and found herself falling into the strong and warm embrace of United soldier Ewan Roberts. So that's chapter 14 of Walking on Cinders. Sorry it's been a little bit rushed tonight and we weren't here at 6 o'clock as was the case before, but tomorrow I will be back at the usual time of 6 p.m. and I will read you chapter 15 of my novel Walking on Cinders.